Hello, Jakarta and the world. I'm Doug Johnson, and this is White Trash Talking. This week I'll be talking about Joe Biden's departure, his legacy, and the incredible damage he's done to the people and the country. There's nothing unusual or special about him as a politician except his longevity, which has enabled him to amass so much destruction. He spent nearly 50 years in office, first as a council member for 3 years, then as senator for 36 years, vice president for 8 years, and then president for 4 years. During that time, he was a servant for his financial backers, who were mainly business and financial companies, as well as large corporations. And for the most part, he neglected or undermined the interest of the electorate. This is what most, if not all, politicians do. But Biden's tenure in office was particularly heinous. He repeatedly attacked safety nets, such as Social Security and welfare, and he increased military spending, voted to pass NAFTA, to repeal the Glass-Steagall Act, which deregulates the banking industry, was against universal health care and for private insurance and large pharmaceuticals. He authored the Omnibus crime bill, which militarized the police and quadrupled the number of inmates in the U.S. Joe Biden is no friend of the people, and his departure is long overdue. Today, I will address a few of these items I just mentioned. Not all of them, but just a few of them. But first, I want to show the two distinct faces of Joe Biden. The wholesome, friendly, grandfatherly mask he shows the people, and the cockroach he is behind the mask. Let's look at a debate between Biden and Bernie Sanders, in which Sanders calls him out on his voting record.
Let me ask you a question, Joe.
Yeah.
You're right here with me.
Yeah.
Have you been on the floor of the Senate? You were in the Senate for a few years.
Yeah.
Time and time again, talking about the necessity, with pride, about cutting Social Security, cutting Medicare, cutting veterans programs.
No.
You never said that.
No.
When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans spending. I meant every single solitary thing in the government.
Look, here's the deal.
You're an honest guy. Why don't you just tell the truth here? We all make mistakes.
I am telling the truth.
And I not only tried it once, I tried it twice, I tried it a third time, and I tried it a fourth time.
Joe, let me repeat it again. I want you just to be straight with the American people. I am saying that you have been on the floor of the Senate time and time again talking about the need to cut Social Security, Medicare, and veterans programs. Is that true, or is that not true?
No, it's not true.
Okay, I think Joe Biden he's a serial liar, compulsive liar perhaps. He's been at this so long, and it's just a part of his DNA at this point, that I don't know if he knows he's lying. You know, he's just being a political animal. He couldn't have survived this long without his lies, without his two faces. So, you know, let's listen to what else he has to say here.
That is not true?
That is not true.
I meant veterans spending. I meant every single solitary thing in the government.
Everything was on the table. I did not support any of those cuts in Social Security or in veterans benefits.
Whoa. Everything was on the table. All right, you're right. You just said it, including, in your judgment, cuts to Social Security and veterans.
In order to get the kinds of changes we need on other things related.
Joe, then
but we did not cut it.
I know, because people like me helped stop that.
So why would he cut social benefits? It's an unpopular thing to do once people find out. It's because, you know, there's a deficit and they need to come up with money some way, rather than go after, say, military spending with their billions, trillions of dollars for that. You can't touch that. That's corporate interest. That's the military-industrial complex. You can't touch it. There's other big items like that that involve corporations. You can never touch that. But the people, that's expendable. Okay, so another thing that Joe Biden was, he authored the Omnibus crime bill. And I want to just explain what that meant, okay? So So what it did, I've already mentioned it, it increased the prison population fourfold. But it also permitted the death penalty for 60 new offenses, and 3/4 of everyone on death row was a person of color. So it didn't really target white-collar crime, such as Hunter Biden was involved in. Didn't touch people like that. It gave life sentences to people with 3 felonies or more. This is 3 strikes and you're out. And it increased harsh penalties for youthful offenders. And they call that the school to prison pipeline, because they don't have a chance. The pathway from school to prison is pretty much set. So why would a politician do that? It's because it's a popular thing to do. The people really don't understand. They're scared. They see crime increasing. They want something done about it. And a more healthy way to deal with it would be to enact new programs, training, give opportunities, education, and so on. But it's easier for the politicians to posture and just say that they're tough on crime. They're out to win elections. They're not really trying to solve any kind of social problem here. All right, so let's look at what Joe Biden said about the Omnibus crime bill.
5.5 years on average. And under the federal system, which when the senator was in the House and I was, and we worked on this, under the federal guidelines, we took away the discretion of the judges. That's why they're mad. Right now, the judges aren't real happy with the senator from Delaware, separate and apart from minimum mandatories, because we passed a law that is the law now, and the Sentencing Commission exists out there, where for every federal crime we pass, we make a crime, they must set up a sentence, and the sentences are those that they're required, the defendant is required, the convicted person is required to serve that time. That's what we call flat time sentencing. In only rare circumstances can a judge, a federal judge, alter.
Yeah, he's bragging that he's overriding judges who are in the courtroom. They understand the nuances of the case, nuances of the perpetrator, and they're much better positioned to determine the penalty for the crimes. And Joe Biden, again, he's just posturing. He's just showing the people, look, I'm tough on crime. And he's really enacting a policy that is, for the last 50 years, has been extremely damaging to the American people. Okay, so another thing that Joe Biden was promoting during his time in office was NAFTA. This is going back to the 1990s. And NAFTA was probably the most destructive financial agreement ever enacted. They call it a trade agreement, but it's really not trade. It allows corporations to move their production out of the country and then bring back their products to sell to the country. So they call that trade, but in fact, it's just a corporation shifting their assets. It's not trade. So let's look at NAFTA, what it is. I'm going to rely on Chomsky's, one of his essays in a collection of essays called The Masters of Mankind, Summary of NAFTA. And in the beginning of that, he talks about the historical context, which, in number one here, he says that this has been going on since the inception of the country. Big business has always enacted policies that favor itself, and that's true today with supranational corporations that are perpetuating these patterns. And in number two, it talks about the exploitation of wealth inequality, and in a nutshell, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. But more specifically to NAFTA, number three here, Chomsky says that NAFTA entrenches corporate control through measures in intellectual property protection, limiting competition, and sovereignty. And number four, economic and social consequences. The real wages have gone down. Jobs have been lost. Hundreds of thousands of jobs have been lost in America. Number 4, global trade. It weakens labor protections and social programs globally. It's a race to the bottom. And number 6, environmental and social costs. So NAFTA undermines efforts to enforce environmental standards, labor rights, and public health measures, framing such initiatives as trade barriers. And interestingly, corporations have the right to sue governments under this agreement. And so if a government says, you know, for example, they want to protect a forest, and a corporation is interested in cutting down the trees, the government tries to stop them, well, the corporation can sue them and say, you are enacting a trade barrier. And it's things like this that are very devastating to communities and to the country. Okay, so that being said, I want to look at Joe Biden, what he said on the floor of the Senate about NAFTA. And here he's wearing his friendly public face.
I have heard characterized today on the floor by some who oppose NAFTA the irrational fears of labor. What in the heck would you be if you were a member of organized labor and you saw your living standard, you saw your future, you saw your children's future, you saw your security decimated? Of course they're frightened. They have every reason to be frightened. Because in fact, when a person looks down that barrel of a gun and sees that that which they've worked for their whole life is not likely to be there much longer, and they look to their left and they look to their right, like they used to say in graduate school, and learn and find out that neither of the people on either side are there now from when they started, they have reason to fear. This is not a false fear. It's a genuine fear. So
Biden is showing here that he understands the destructive nature of NAFTA. And he's being a champion of the people here. And this is the one side of Biden. And I think this is how he views himself and how he lives with himself and is able to go to sleep at night. Because he makes these kind of speeches on the floor of the Senate and the people hear it. You know, this is broadcast on C-SPAN, and so people are aware of this side of Joe Biden. They think that's him, right? And he seems to really care. All right, let's continue listening.
At the same time, corporate America has announced layoffs of 255,000 jobs for the first half of this year. That was 23% higher than last year, the highest first half year figure ever. Long-term unemployment is the highest ever because middle-class jobs are being eliminated, not just moved around the country or to other industries or to other countries. Workers can't find the kind of jobs they've lost, and they're frightened. How dare we tell the people not to worry? How dare we tell the 45-year-old DuPont chemist with an advanced degree and 2 kids in college and a mortgage to pay that he has nothing to fear? Will he get another job? Maybe. Will he ever get a job as good as the one he lost? Highly unlikely under any scenario. How dare we tell the worker at General Motors not to worry? Free trade will make us all better off. Not going to make him better off.
Yes, NAFTA has gutted industry in the United States. There's many cities now that have large zones that are abandoned, ghost towns, places that used to be populated with very good jobs and robust communities. NAFTA devastated the U.S. The U.S. has never recovered from this. Joe Biden understood that back when he was making this speech. And so where does he fall? You think, of course, he voted against NAFTA, right? Let's listen.
And I'm announcing my support for NAFTA.
What? Did I hear that right? Let's listen again.
And I'm announcing my support for NAFTA.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, he can get up and give an impassioned speech like that and then support NAFTA. Now, again, why would he do that? Well, here's the answer. This is Biden's financial statement of his earnings. And over the course of Biden's career, he has raised $2,221,125,205. That's an awful lot of money. Okay? So this explains a lot. These corporate interests, these big money backers, needed NAFTA to pass. They wanted to move their operations overseas, production overseas, where they can pay dirt low wages, make much greater profit, and not have to worry about the controls on environment and protections and all that. So this is why. His backers were demanding that he vote for NAFTA, so he did. All right. Okay, now I'd like to look at Joe Biden's stance on Medicare for All and how medical corporations have influenced his decisions through massive financial contributions. An article published in The Hill in 2020 talks about this issue. Progressives raise red flags over health insured donations. And I'm just going to point out a couple of excerpts from this. The health insurance industry is donating big to Democrats, even amid criticism of the industry and growing calls for Medicare for All from the progressive wing of the party. 4 big insurance companies, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Health Group, CVS Health, and Cigna, and their employees have given about $4.5 million collectively in campaign contributions in the 2020 cycle. Okay, you notice United Health Group, that's the one with the CEO that was just shot by this guy Mangione. All right, let's go on. Insurance companies are using their money to try and influence not only Republicans, but Democrats as well. The problem is that they control the whole system. Insurance companies and their employees understand that hedging their bets and giving money to both Republicans and Democrats is a smart way to stop any kind of health reform, including but not limited to Medicare for All. Insurers are so moneyed that they can outspend proponents exponentially, so there is no reason to choose sides. For years, the status quo of industry has been to line the pockets of elected officials on both sides of the aisle, said Kelly Coogan-Gare, Assistant Director of Public and Community Advocacy at National Nurses United, a union that represents nurses. Over the past year, we have seen an increasingly aggressive effort on the part of insurance industry and healthcare industry in general to consolidate and to get organized around fighting Medicare for All. Okay. So that's the backdrop of what I'm talking about next. You know that there's been a lot of money thrown at the politicians and a big fight going on. And we know who's won because there has been no healthcare reform whatsoever. And it's getting worse, as evidenced by the shooting of this CEO. People are fed up and they're spending way more than they need to. All right, so let's listen to Biden talk passionately about the need for healthcare and for the public option. Let's listen.
I will do everything I can to take responsibility and ease this burden on you and your families. I'll put your family first. That will begin with the dramatic expansion of health coverage and bold steps to lower health care costs. We need a public option now more than ever, especially when more than 20 million people are unemployed. That public option will allow every American, regardless of their employment status, the choice to get a Medicare-like plan. It'll force private insurers to keep premiums low, offer better coverage, because for the first time, they'll have to compete for your business against a public insurer that doesn't have to make a profit. We're also going to further reduce costs. by making it less expensive for Americans to choose plans with lower deductibles and out-of-pocket expenses, by lowering prescription drug prices, by ending the practice of so-called surprise billings, which can leave you with unexpectedly high bills.
He's done none of this. He has not reduced cost. He has not reined in the industries, the pharmaceuticals, healthcare. He's done none of it. These are just empty promises that sound good. And he's talking about a blend between the public and the private healthcare, because he can't say he's against private healthcare. I mean, he's with his financial backers like that. At the same time, he doesn't think that it's even remotely possible for the public option to become viable. Okay? But what happened was, during Sanders' run for presidency and the years afterwards, the conversation increased around Medicare for all, about the public option, universal health care. The progressives got on board like AOC, and it began to sound like it might happen. In fact, you know, a vote was going to come to the floor, and it was panic time for Biden. So this is what he did. This is how he reacted.
I would veto anything that delays providing the security and the certainty of health care being available now. If they got that through and by some miracle, and there was an epiphany that occurred, and some miracle occurred that said, okay, it's passed, then you got to look at the cost. I want to know, how did they find the $35 trillion? What is that doing? Is it going to significantly raise taxes on the middle class, which it will? What's going to happen? Look, my opposition isn't to the principle that you should have Medicare. I mean, everybody, healthcare should be a right in America. My opposition relates to whether or not, A, it's doable, two, what the cost is, and what the consequences for the rest of the budget are. How are you going to find $35 trillion over the next 10 years without having profound impacts on everything from taxes for middle class and working class people, as well as the impact on the rest of the budget?
The money would come from the excess bureaucracy that would be eliminated, the prices of the private drug companies would be managed and regulated, so they'd greatly reduce those prices. This is where the money comes from. And Joe Biden says it's not doable because he makes it not doable. Biden's heart is so corrupted by money and lust to perpetuate his reign of power that he will do or say anything. He will even commit genocide. Now, I haven't talked about that today because it's something that I've addressed in previous episodes. But he will do anything to stay in power. Today, I just want to say goodbye and good riddance to Joe Biden, you cockroach. It's time for you to crawl back in that dark hole from which you emerged and give this precious world a respite from your vile, evil ambitions. Okay, that's all I have to say. If you liked what I said, please give me a like, subscribe. I post once a week, so I hope to see you next week. Thank you very much. Bye.